functionality. The city's guidelines kind of changed for hybrid meetings toward the end of last year. And the Zoom rules and guidelines and functions keep changing. And thank you, Ingrid, for what you do to make sure these fine people are connected and that we have community members who can see and hear and comment upon what we're doing. And thank you again to our interpreters. So I think everyone's here. Lindsay, you want to take it away?
Oh, well, previously, I know we don't have too long of an agenda item planned. Previously, I said that I couldn't facilitate these coming meetings, but I think that I could probably just jump in since we don't have much on the agenda.
I just
and we're
blanked
signing
on
off
that
early.
even though we had this conversation last week. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I think it's doable. For those who are just joining us, I have a work commitment with some very early morning commitments. But because we have a short agenda plan today, Elizabeth, how about this? I'll start off, and if things happen to run late, which I don't think they will, I'll pass off to you.
No problem at all.
That'll meet my needs too. So, okay, cool. So then we will we'll convene the meeting. It is 6:08. It's January 23rd. We're calling the meeting to order. And let's begin with some agenda adjustments. I've got one in mind, but I'll make some space for commissioners first. Does anyone have any agenda adjustments?
Let's actually, Lindsay, I'm sorry. Ingrid, do you want to kind of go over the Zoom instructions?
Yeah, I'll go over the logistics of tonight. So welcome to this HRC January meeting. It's lovely to see you all in the space. Bienvenidos a esta reunión. I think you all have already chosen the interpretation icon, the language of your choice. So please stay in the channel of your preference. And for those people who are hearing the webinar, please do so as well. So whenever we do have interpretation, we ask for all the speakers to please pronounce clearly your words, breathe between sentences, and speak slowly. We strive for not interrupting the speakers. And if you have a headset or a microphone, please mute yourself when you're not speaking. As I said, we're all selecting the language of our preference. And I ask of all of you to please avoid using any kind of idioms or any kind of linguistic expressions that might not be translatable or interpreted, as we all come from different cultures and language. So some of the rules that the city has for public participation at any city meeting are in the spirit of fostering a space where everybody feels heard and respected. And we have created this vision for productive and meaningful meetings where conversations are inclusive and productive. These came from a collaboration work with community members and supports the physical, emotional safety for those members, staff, board and commission members, as well as the democracy for people of all ages, identities, lived experiences, and political perspectives. If you have questions about any of these vision or the community engagement processes, please visit the website that you'll see on this screen right now. And I can post that in the chat as well. So these are some of the examples of what we expect for people to follow some of the guidelines that support this vision. So one of them is that all the remarks and testimony shall be limited to matters related to city businesses. No participant should make threats or use any forms of intimidation against any person. Obscenity, racial epithets, and other speech and behavior that disrupts or otherwise impedes the ability to conduct the meeting are prohibited. Participants are required to sign up to speak using the name they're commonly known by, and individuals must display their whole name before being allowed to speak online. We are now recording video and audio, but only audio testimony is permitted online. I also would like to add that both recordings, both of the recordings in Spanish and English will be available and will be available within 48 hours after this meeting.
Thanks so much, Ingrid.
You're welcome.
Sorry, I skipped you. Okay, that will bring us back to our agenda adjustments. Before we, the thing I wanted to note earlier is that we don't have the public comment period on our agenda. So typically we do that right after our approval of minutes and before we get into our items. So that will that'll become new item 4, and then action items will become number 5, Roman numeral 5, and then everything under that will just bump down. Are there other agenda adjustments from commissioners? Christine.
I just have a quick question. It may be that it actually already is in the agenda, but just not explicitly called out. But could we get an update on where things stand with the Human Relations Fund? And what that looks like? Great.
Sorry, struggling to find the mute button. Yes, I'd be happy to provide an update on that in the staff update.
Great, thank you.
Thanks for bringing that up, Christine. All right, that brings us to approval of minutes from our meeting in November. Just as a reminder, we are looking for accuracy rather than like perfection or total comprehensiveness. Do any of the commissioners have any adjustments to the agenda? And then if nobody has any adjustments, we'll be looking for a motion to approve, a second, and then a vote.
I motion to approve the minutes from our meeting on November 28th, 2022.
I second the motion.
All right. Thank you, Vicar. Thank you, JH. Thank you, Christine. Looks like we have almost everybody here, but let's look for a verbal or visual. Hi.
Hi.
Hi, JH. And the ayes have it for the audio record. That was a unanimous approval. All right, so that gets us into public comment. This is the period of our meeting where members from the public can address the commission, and people can sign up ahead of time to indicate that they want to speak. Lynn, I see your question about when is public comment. Public comment is now, and I see your hand. Ingrid, have we had anyone else sign up or otherwise indicate that they want to speak?
No, I do not have
How
anyone
would they?
else.
Because it wasn't on the agenda. No one knows that they could speak. So why would they come if they just came to speak? I mean, I'm coming anyway, but.
Sorry about that oversight, Lynn. And we know you're familiar with the format. So
Yeah, it's not, it doesn't affect me, it affects everybody else.
yeah,
You know what
thank
I'm
you for
saying?
pointing that out. I do. So, so Lynn, you have 3 minutes for the public comment, and we're going to hand it over to you.
I was a bit concerned. I went to one of the meetings lately that was a police oversight, something or other, and no one was there. And when I spoke, I asked the person, Hadassah, who was running it, what the fuss was, because I follow 8 boards, and it's a lot to cover. I mean, planning board and large scale type development and stuff in Boulder. And I'm trying to bring it all together because it's all intersectional and it's all interdisciplinary and connected. But she wouldn't say anything. And then when I read about Michelle or Megan Wilson leaving her post, and she's the one who started the police oversight. And then 2 people were added, I guess, from 9 to 11. And then there was all this discussion at city council about, well, is there going to be a quorum if the 2 people that are leaving aren't willing to stay on until they make their decision, because of these 2 people that are coming on that are very anti-police. But it sounded to me from this whole reading the history of it and following the Boulder Beats articles about it, it sounded to me like it goes back to what I thought it was. And I brought up things about the bylaws at that time because she said, this is just restricted the bylaws. And basically what I was saying is the same thing. The police are out of hand in this town. And then the fact that you're saying that there's 2 people that are very anti-police on a board of a high majority that are pro-police, that would be the natural, basis of things for there to be that opposition. So, so I recommended to the council to accept the people, and then they're delaying it until the 26th and seeing if they have the quorum. And the thing about the quorum, if you can change the quorum to 9 people or 7 people or 11 people, it was intended to be 11 people. They added 2 people actually, because there was all this controversy about it. And of course we know it's controversy. It's George Floyd. Now it's the cop city in Georgia. If you've read about Tortuguita, just got murdered on Wednesday. This is hot on the press and it's hot on people's minds. And yes, people are of course going to be very divided about it. Of course, I want the police to be able to save me if something really bad is happening, but so it's the same old kind of thing. But it seems like there's a constant inertia about getting anything done. I've been reading lately all of the Boulder weeklies from 7 years ago, and it's like amazing. It's like nothing has changed in this town. Go back another 10 or 20 years, it's like the same thing. There's this inertia, and there needs to just be an openness, and the secrecy is a really big problem. And
Thank you, Lynn.
that was clear and I knew that already, but when I read all this stuff and figured it out, nobody wants to talk about it just out front. Just get it out there, and think about it and get some back and forth.
Thank you,
That's
Lynn.
my-
Your time is up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn. Thanks, Ingrid. Okay, that just a quick response. We have a relevant item on the agenda to that comment, and it is within our action items, Roman numeral number 4. We are there right now. Item A under numeral 4. Lynn, it sounds like you're following along in the agenda already. We have 2 items inside of item number 4. The first is about the recruitment efforts on this commission for the HRC. And then the item after that, we will have a Q&A with Amy Kane about some of the issues that you were just discussing, the police oversight panel. So I'm going to begin with the first item about HRC recruitment efforts. We'll have we'll have new board and commission appointments beginning in April. And some of them one of them will be on this commission because I will be technically resigning, but in one way, my term is ending. The technicality of that is like I filled a seat midterm. And I've been on the commission for 5 years, which is traditionally the amount of time that people serve, right? So I'm stepping down to focus on other things. And we will have a new commissioner. But to do that, we have to recruit some folks. And last year, we did such a great job with recruitment. There were so many great candidates, and 2 of them are on the commission now. So I'm going to stop talking and hand it over to staff to continue the conversation.
Thank you, Lindsay. Let me see if I can screen share. Just have one slide. Yes, thank you, Ingrid. So thank you, Lindsay. Elizabeth Crow, serving as Deputy Director of Housing and Human Services. As Lindsay said, we are in recruiting mode for all city boards and commissions, and including for the Human Relations Commission. And the deadline to apply for a position is January 30. The link, which I just also put in the chat, that is on this slide, and we'll again share the PowerPoint slides with everyone after the meeting, will take you to a page that has information on all of the boards and commissions that are currently recruiting and give you an opportunity to apply online that way. After all of the applications are received, there are interviews conducted with staff and city council members that take place at the end of February, starting, I believe, on February 13 and extending through the end of the month. So Ingrid has already provided some specific dates and times that they can set aside for interviews for any applications we get in from the Human Relations Commission. A couple of things that we've done already as staff to let people know about this opportunity. Press releases have gone out, the web pages have been updated. There is this one kind of hub on the web page where people can go to read about and explore all the different options, including applying to the HRC. And we've also done some outreach from our department specifically to people, organizations, nonprofit agencies that include many who have engaged with the HRC in the past, including having received funding. We also reached out, and I'll talk a little bit later on this evening about the city's guaranteed income pilot project. We had a lot of people apply for a task force to help guide that project. And everyone who did not get selected, we also shared about this opportunity as people who had already expressed their interest in becoming engaged and advising the city on issues affecting people of low income or who are experiencing systemic disparities. So we hope that all of those efforts, and maybe a little help from all of you, if you know of people who would be interested in applying, we hope to get the word out for the next week, and hopefully we'll have some great applicants. Ingrid, anything that you want to add to that?
I don't have anything to add.
Any questions? Christine.
Hi, thanks. I have 2 questions, and it's possible neither of them can actually be answered today, but I'm just going to raise them anyway. The first question I have is, I know in the past couple of years, the deadline for applications has actually been extended at the last minute. If you know if that is a possibility that would happen this year, and maybe that's not something that can be addressed until the deadline is actually here. So I appreciate that. If that's the case, I understand that. And then my second question is also, I don't want to put anyone on the spot. So maybe this is more of a statement than a question, but I believe there might be the possibility that we actually have 2 seats that could open up because of a seat that was partially filled last year. But I might have the timing of that wrong too. So if there's anything worth addressing there too, I would love that. And if there's not, then that's also all right.
Thanks, Christine. I have not seen any information yet about already extending the deadline. So I think you're right on that. But if that does happen, we will of course let everyone know as soon as possible. And on the second issue, yes, that's correct. And we do know that there is interest in filling that slot as well.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah,
So we have 2 vacancies.
correct.
Can we get a little clarity here? Does this mean that Fikar, this is your term that we're talking about, right? Would you just be willing to talk about this?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Open to talk about it. So yes, my term was just a 1-year term. And in my meeting with Ingrid, I had brought up the fact that my term is also coming to an end. However, I would love to re-interview, or I don't know what I need to do to continue with the commission. And Ingrid said in the past, we don't usually do a re-interview, but she'll just follow up with me with next steps, which is why I didn't say anything, because I actually don't know what's going on myself.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I can share a little bit about that. I did check with the city manager's office. You do need to reapply, to resubmit a form, and usually council reappoints you. So it's a little bit more of a simplified process, but then you will be reappointed for the 5-year term, for the full term. I did confirm with them as well, and so far we only have 1 application. So please, let's go ahead and spread the word and reach out to people in your networks and share your experience, which I think it's the most powerful way of recruitment, right? Yeah. And Fikar, I can follow up with another email to clarify any other questions you may have.
Okay, thank you, Ingrid. Yeah, it's good to know that I need to reapply before the deadline. So thanks for letting me know.
Of course.
Thank you. Christine?
I'll just leave one editorial comment and then ask one more question. My editorial comment is that I am thrilled, Fikar, that you want to stay on. And I just wanted to say that I'm very thrilled about that. I think that's great. And then my question is also if there has been outreach to former members of the HRC to tap their networks as well. Because I believe that's actually how I actually first learned about the HRC and applied, is that a former member had reached out to me and told me about it. So I was wondering if the city has reached out to former members and asked them to tap their networks as well.
That's certainly something Ingrid and I can do. Whether or not that is a practice kind of across the board, I don't know, but we can actually be sure to reach out to those folks for whom we have their contact information.
Terrific. Thank you.
Great suggestion.
Thank you, everybody. And Fikar, I'm so glad to hear you're interested in staying on too.
Oh, thank you guys so much. I definitely love it here and I'm learning so much. And I am so excited that you guys are excited about me staying.
Absolutely.
Definitely. Yeah, you have our endorsement for sure.
And if any of the rest of you have specifics, like if you have somebody in mind and would prefer for Ingrid or I to reach out to them on your behalf, we're happy to do that as well. Just let us know if you have any suggestions. There's a flyer that we can forward to any of you. And I think you should have already received the email we sent out earlier. I believe I sent it to all HRC members last week, but if you didn't get it, let me know, or we can resend that around. All right, thank you.
You. And okay, just to wrap that up, can I put a little note in there to receive the flyer, please? I think I might have missed it. Yeah, again, reach out to your networks, because we'll have at least one seat. All right, so that brings us to our next item. We have the Q&A with Amy about the Police Oversight Committee. Amy, you know, what I was, oh, good. Okay, you have a presentation. So I'm going to just, no?
Not
Just a
really.
slide.
Just a slide. Okay, I'm going to pass this off to you to begin. And then our first questions may be just around kind of like bringing this issue into context and relevance for us, because the way it came up was just as a question in a previous meeting, and we don't have collectively a lot of context, just kind of whatever we've picked up in you know, our following current local events.
Right. Cool. Thank you so much for that, Lindsay. And so I'm going to ask Elizabeth, maybe we go ahead, and Ingrid, maybe we just go ahead and take the slide down so I can see everybody's faces, and that can just encourage our dialogue. But thank you so much for having me. My name is Amy Kane. I am the Equity Officer for the City of Boulder. I've been in this role since about 2018. I have worked for the City of Boulder for a little over 17 years now. And so I've been taking the lead since the inception of the Police Oversight Panel. I can give you a little, might be helpful for everybody to understand kind of how the Police Oversight Panel came to be, and then to kind of iterate where we are at this point. That might help. Would that be helpful for folks? Okay, cool. So back in 2019, the Boulder Police Department had an altercation with an African-American student named Zaid Atkinson from the University of Naropa. And his name is Zaid Atkinson, and he was picking up trash at the residence where he was doing work study for Naropa University. He was approached by a single officer, Officer Smiley, who began asking Mr. Atkinson a series of questions. At some point in Mr. Atkinson was being very forthcoming in answering all the questions. At some point during the conversation, Mr. Atkinson chose to stop replying. He felt like he'd replied enough to the officer at hand, at which point the officer kept pursuing Mr. Atkinson as he was trying to get back to the entrance, and was like, look, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. This is a very short kind of synopsis. As that altercation went forward, there were threats about bringing a taser against Mr. Atkinson, and additional officers were called to the scene, where there were hands placed on guns. And I believe one of the officers actually drew a gun. One of the gentlemen who worked for the university and was present inside the building came out to speak with officers, verifying Mr. Atkinson and his identity, at which point the officers all withdrew and left the premises. That instituted a community outcry for change. City Council hosted a community conversation. I realized I was speaking too quickly, so I'm slowing down a little bit. They hosted a community conversation where the community asked that the organization, the city organization, look into forming our own type of civilian police oversight. So we worked with the NAACP to put together a charter that would outline what that task force of community members would look like. So we had a group of about 15 community members, some of who were members of the NAACP Boulder County chapter, and they spent a series of several months really analyzing different civilian oversight mechanisms across the country, interviewing community stakeholders, speaking with other jurisdictions, speaking to leaders from the National Association for Civilian Oversight and Law Enforcement. And they came up with an auditor monitor type of civilian oversight. What that means is that they have an auditor monitor, so a single individual who does not live within the police department, but sometimes reports out to a different citizen board, or to, like our instance, it reports directly to me within the city manager's office. That individual goes along with any type of complaint that comes through the police department about officer conduct. They can also make suggestions of places where they think interviewing complainants or interviewing officers who have complaints against them, they can make suggestions, and they can also make discipline or disposition recommendations. So they can say, yes, I think that this is a violation of whatever code, conduct, policy is on the books for the police department. That individual also, excuse me, I'm going to cough really quickly. That individual also has the ability, excuse me, to make policy recommendations to the department, and then is also the staff liaison between the police department and the civilian police oversight panel. So the police oversight panel was another mechanism of oversight that came forth from that initial ordinance in 2019. That community panel was originally scheduled to have 9 people and with 3 alternates. So if people came off the panel, they would come on. That group was also, at this point, before the panel was seated and that first ordinance came, the task force also asked for an extended period of time to help with the implementation of that civilian oversight panel and the police, the independent police monitor. So we worked through that, got the adopted ordinance okayed and approved by council. I think it was in 2022 at that point. And the implementation team helped with the hiring process for the independent monitor. And then also some of them stayed on to help with the selection criteria and selection of the first police oversight panel, which at that point had 9 members. They ran through that. They got successfully 9 community members to commit to playing a role on the police oversight panel. Some of those individuals had 2-year terms, some have 3-year terms, and then there's always a 1-year term reserved for student participation. The task force recognized the barriers to access to the city board and commission process and really wanted to stay out of being considered a board or commission to the city. So they had more flexibility in being an oversight panel versus being a traditional city board or commission. And part of that is that flexibility in the year terms that those individuals have. We had 9 members of that original panel with 3 alternates. Over time, recognizing the intensity of the work, this was the first panel. They had to come up with their bylaws. They had to come up with the systems of how they would conduct the reviews of cases as well. So whenever there's a complaint that rises to the level that the panel would have an opportunity to review, every month they get a selection of different cases, summary, and they choose which ones they want to investigate further. And then they have 3 of the panel members who choose to do the full investigation along with the independent police monitor. The panel can also make dispositions. So again, they can say, yes, we think this is a violation. But what's different about this panel that many oversight panels do not have is the ability to make disciplinary recommendations. So the police department in Boulder has a disciplinary matrix of what discipline looks like for offending officers. Going through this process, I think we've recognized that there's some pros and cons to having a disciplinary matrix. And I think that's one of the things that the panel will be analyzing, because they also have the ability to make recommendations around policy. So that's in a nutshell of kind of how that whole process works. We ended up getting down to, I think, only 7 members of the panel due to people withdrawing, people getting jobs, moving out of state, things like that, and all the alternates were used up. So at that point, the committee, decided to go back to council and ask to elevate the number of candidates on the police oversight panel. And so now the ordinance says they are looking for 11 members of the panel with 4 alternates. We went through the recruitment process. We came up with, I think there were 57 applicants. There is a selection committee that is made up of 2 panel members and then a representative from 2 nonprofits selected by the whole panel, local nonprofits. And so a group of 4 go through the selection process and chose how many people they wanted to conduct interviews, similar to how you all have done to get on the Human Relations Commission. Those are recorded and those are posted on the city website. So those recommendations went before council on December 15th. As part of that process, there was a lot of community concerns raised about particularly about one of the candidates, and if the criteria that was laid out in the ordinance had been adhered to, and asked that the selection committee go back and evaluate that they had adhered to the criteria outlined in the ordinance. They were also asked to review the information that had been emailed to City Council during this process of the concerns about candidates that were requested to move forward. As such, all of that information was sent back to the selection committee with an ask that they reaffirm or change their recommendations. They chose to reaffirm their recommendations, and those were presented to council last week. Were supposed to be presented to council last week, and at the same time, moments before the meeting, there was a code of compliance complaint that was filed against the city on the selection panel, or against council and the selection panel about the process, which kind of halted the desire for council to approve that slate, because there's some interesting things about a code compliance case of really investigating what that even means. And so city attorney has been working to understand how to address this complaint. This is an unprecedented situation. I don't know that council's ever received something like this. And with a commission like the panel, it's really a unique situation. So they've put a pause and are going to be hosting a special meeting this Thursday night to determine if they will have independent counsel review the complaint and any like check and see its validity. And then there's also time on the agenda for council to approve or not approve that slate of candidates who have been recommended. So that's what's going on with police oversight panel. Additionally, we had our first independent police monitor, Joey Lapari, who got offered a position with the LAPD or General Attorney's Office for LAPD to be a complaint investigator. And so he chose to take that opportunity and left the city organization in September. So we have been working to fill that position over the past several months. We had, I think, 30 people who applied for the role. We hosted some virtual interviews and brought 3 of those candidates. We hosted 7 virtual interviews and then had last week, as you all know, we hosted an in-person community forum with special guests, a reception with special guests. Carlos, thank you for coming to that. And Ingrid, thank you so much for making the time and being able to come. That community reception offered that time for people to have informal conversation with the candidates. And then there was a community forum for people who were in person, but then also online, where people posed questions for those candidates. We had a lot of really great questions. And then on the feedback also, or on our website, offered a feedback form to get further information from community about kind of where they thought the candidates fit in the structure of this work and their abilities. The next day, we hosted a series of 4 different interview panels for those candidates. One was with our executive leadership. So that included myself, our city manager, and our deputy city manager. We had a community panel, which included 2 of our police oversight panel members, as well as 2 members of the larger community. Well, one of the larger communities, so one of our colleagues from El Centro Amistad. And then also we had Mike Giannaco, who has been helping. His organization is Office of the Independent Review in California, and they go into communities that are having issues or just need like a one-off analysis of a complaint investigation. They have been acting as our interim monitor. So I asked Mike to come as well because he's very familiar in this space. We are now in the phases where we've narrowed it down to probably 2 candidates. And I've been digging deeper on those 2 candidates from some of those questions that came out from the panels and that community forum. And so that's where we are at this point with that. And so with that, I know that there's lots of questions and I'm happy to be here to answer those for you as best I can.
Thanks so much, Amy.
My pleasure. I know there was a question. So a few things that have come up through this process, and I apologize, I'm interrupting Lindsay, but I know that there was a question about the relationship between the HRC and the police oversight panel. And so that was part of that work, right, is involving you all engaging in that interview process as an opportunity. But what has come about over the past several months as we've been looking at the ordinance, this was an inaugural ordinance. And what we've realized over the past several months, year, since it's been adopted, is that there are definitely some challenges with that ordinance that need some work. And so I'm going to be asking the police oversight panel to be engaging this group in some of that analysis with that current ordinance, and then also helping give feedback, helping to engage more broader community to help provide some of that feedback about what would be most helpful in the next iterations of that ordinance. So sorry, I know that was one of the questions. I thought I'd get it. Softball.
Thanks, Amy. And thank you for bringing all of that into context, especially we can hear you're not like fully recovered from your cold yet. So thanks for doing all of that speaking. I'm going to open up for other questions from commissioners and potentially some zooming in on the question that Amy answered already.
I can add that we don't intend to start making changes, big changes to the ordinance until we've got this panel seated. We think it's important that they be participating in that, as well as the independent police monitor. I think it's important for them to engage in that.
Thank you. Christine? Oh, Christine, we can't hear you.
I was saying I have so many questions. I don't know exactly where to begin, but I'll just start by thanking you, Amy, for coming and giving us that explanation. I really appreciate it. You know, I've sort of spent the last I'm the commissioner who sort of brought up the question at our last meeting, which was in November and not December. And the reason I had brought it up in November was because that was right after two of the members of the panel resigned. And so I've done some reading in the last couple months, and I appreciate that this is an extremely complex situation. But I also want to nod a little bit to what Lynn Siegel said earlier in her public comment, which is that, you know, in many ways, you know, it feels like, I don't know, maybe 3 steps forward, 2 steps back.
Yeah.
You know, I look at the 2019 incident with Zayed Atkinson that you described, and for the benefit of my fellow commissioners, you know, we helped to fund a documentary called This Is Not Who We Are. I know many of us have seen it. I'm not sure if we all have, but if you have, this incident is a big part of that film. So that might help give some context, additional context. I guess I'll start with the whole, you know, HRC question that you touched on at the end. And I guess one question I have is actually historical. And it is whether the HRC has ever been in conversations about this. And part of the reason I ask is because, you know, I've been on this commission now for just a little bit less than 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been on this commission around the same time, I think, when the police oversight panel was established. And in the last 2 years, I do recall the independent police monitor, Joey Lapari, coming in and introducing himself to us. And the police chief has been here a couple of times, once because she was also new, to introduce herself, and then also to talk about reimagining police. And to my recollection, those are the only interactions where the HRC has had any kind of consultation with policing in this town. Yet the topic of policing is one that is critical and hits squarely in the remit of what we as a Human Relations Commission are tasked to look at. You know, I would also hazard to say that, you know, those of us on this commission have a wide and varied experience with the police. We have lived experience. Some of us have had negative experiences. Some of us have had positive experiences. And as this is a part of what we're supposed to be focusing on, I guess, you know, I'm very pleased to hear that there is a plan for moving forward. And I agree that it makes sense to wait until there is a panel in place and there is a new monitor, given that all of this is in flight. And I have questions about that too, which I'll ask separately. But why is it that historically there has not been working together and consultation on these issues?
Yeah, so that's a really quick question, Christine, and I don't know that I have the best answer. I believe the HRC received a presentation before the original task force took the ordinance to council, but they did not choose to engage with HRC. And honestly, staff could have done a way better job of fostering that connection. And so that's one of the things that I'm aiming to strive for, is to make sure moving forward, because I agree with you, right? This is a huge miss. This is one of the most diverse boards that we have in our system, and your connections to your communities are critical. So I totally agree with you.
Thank you. I'll just, add on to that, that as far as the most recent discourse about this has been, and by recent, I'll just say the last 3 months, I do feel it has been politicized to a great deal. And I don't really think that serves anyone. And I think that as a commission, we have already been vetted and nominated and put into our positions by city council. So I find it unfortunate that there is not room for that. It seems as though the process is being tripped up over technicalities because of people's political objectives, instead of leaving space for healthy debate about the future of policing, which our police force and our police chief have proactively said that we need to do, and that there should be room for discussion across the board and not just from certain parties. So I'll get off my soapbox now,
No,
but
do you care if I
I think
reply
it's
to that?
really important.
Can I reply to that, Christine?
Yes, please.
I agree. That is one reason that the original task force didn't want the panel being reported to council, because they did not want it to become a politicized commission or panel. And here we are, right? A year and a half down the road, it's become political.
Yeah, I find it discouraging that we had this awful incident which spurred discussion in our community, and then a year later George Floyd was murdered and we had a national discussion about this. And now we're in a position where our panel is decimated and trying to figure out its future, and we don't have a monitor.
Yeah.
And now we're getting tripped up on technicalities.
I am
So
100%.
I'm really disappointed by that. I want to make sure other commissioners, I do have more questions, but I want to make sure other commissioners have a chance to ask any questions they have too. If no one has anything right now, I'll just keep going if that's okay.
I saw Christine, sorry, I saw JH come off mute.
Oh, great.
Give me a second to put my thought together before I say what I want to say. Is that okay? So I'm
Absolutely.
trying to put it, okay.
Thank you. That'll give me room to cough. Water.
I don't remember who's. Sure.
Christine, just while JH is putting his thought together, I'm going to put myself on stack, ask a question, and then hand it back to you.
Can you hear me, guys?
Yes.
Okay. So, how would I put it? I don't have much to say about that because, but I have a few experience with the, well, I have one experience with it. It was when Mr. What's his name? I think his name was Laperi, somebody Laperi, and was part of it. And I don't think it was a good experience with the over the board. What do you call it? The police oversight board. So for me, from what I gathered from the whole thing, and my thoughts are, I'm just gonna put my thoughts out there. Like I said, it's hard to put it together. But I I feel like for me, one thing I see is that I don't think it's bias to speak truth about what's going on there. Like I feel like it's corrupt to me, and it's like I feel like the city is legally required to seat the nominated slate for the police oversight, and how do I put that? Like the I think there's a complaint from a lawyer um, from Texas. Can you hear me, guys? Because I'm trying to think about
Yeah.
everything at the same time, and it's kind of hard.
We can
We can hear
fine.
you.
Yeah, and I think that complaint should be ignored, and I think it will open up like a process of stopping all city decisions, and from, like I said, from experience, because I don't know if any of you know about that. When the congressman, what's his name?
Jonah Goose.
What's his name again? Sorry?
Jonah Goose.
Jonah Goose, yeah, brought up that situation to put the name of Officer Talley at the post office. I have to say, I know some people, think he was a hero, a lot of things, and I think, yes, he did well that day. But for some of you who do not know about that, I did brought up that situation when Officer Talley stopped me, not in a police car, not in uniform, and put a gun over my head. And I have to tell you, that was one of the worst experiences of my life here. And that's probably one of the reasons, too, I am part of the Human Relations Commission, because I thought I was going to have a voice. And the reason I'm bringing that up, it's because I felt like there was no accountability for these guys when they do something wrong. Again, I had a bad experience with Officer, his name used to be like, I think he retired now, probably Pat Wrighton. He covered up everything with lies and, how would I put it, how would I say, like cover up, pretty much. That's the best word I can use. And with this guy named Laperi, I feel like he did exactly the same thing, because like I feel like there was no, how would I put it? I remember he said something that was really crazy to me. They presented a video to the congressman, Nagus, that had no audio. And he said, oh, well, the problem we had is we had the video and the audio was gone. And back then, the NAACP was helping me to see what we can do about that situation. But one thing I see, today, it's like, I'll put it in a way to say, like, the selection committee and the NAACP pretty much have been disrespected and not defended when it comes to that situation. And I think there should be more of how do I put it? Like, I feel like the city is held hostage by a friendship group, you know, like safer, it's but I think as the if I don't know how to explain that because that subject kind of hurt me a lot, guys, and I'm sorry, maybe I should stop. Because I feel like I could have been dead and there was not gonna be any accountability for that, and there was no police oversight back then, and then now it's there. It feels like it's like there's no change, and I don't think change should look like it is right now. And then change should be like something where it means something different. And to finish, this guy officer, I think his name was Smiley, that bothered that kid at Neuropa. He, how would I put it? I remember he stopped me and claimed that I stole my car. I had a Porsche back then. Held me for 45 minutes. 7 cop cars came in, and I made a complaint against him. And we even went to the back then we didn't have an oversight for the police to this guy name was, I think, Stan Garnett back then. Sadly, he didn't turn in the video. There was no video. The only thing we could have found was a single phone call he made to dispatch to get more people to get involved. And so reason I'm bringing those things in is just to say it feels like the how do you call it? The oversight thing for the police should see what's going on in reality instead of looking like the way it is right now. And sorry, I feel like I don't express it the right way. But like I said, it's a subject that's really hard for me to keep pushing through when it comes to that situation, because my 2 experiences were not fun. Yes, Officer Smiley got fired. I think it's because I made a complaint against him before. Unfortunately, Tally died, but overall, like, both experiences were bad for me because there was no response or accountability in any of the situation that I went to. So
Thank you, JH.
thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. I know that that's traumatic and painful, and that's life impacting. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for sharing that, JH.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing it up, and I imagine it's hard. It's difficult to talk about in general, is what I hear you saying, and it's difficult to talk about in a public meeting when you can't even really know who's tuning in. I also hear that there's like a lack of accountability, or you feel a lack of accountability, at least for around these experiences that you went through. And so I appreciate.
Well, I feel like there is a lack of accountability, which I can relate. I can tell you it's co-op. Let's put it on a simple word like that. Like, it's super co-op. Like I said, Cali put a gun on my head, not on a cop car, not on uniform. And the cop that he called back then showed up with him. Okay. Give me a ticket. And then that was the worst part of it. He gave me a ticket for careless driving, cite reckless driving on it, and put the wrong address of where I was. And then, like I said, when I made a complaint against Tally, there was a guy that was investigating that. He put the lie out for like 6 months. And then finally, when they released the video, there was no audio on the video. Like I said, I feel like it's corrupt. And I think if we are looking to have a real oversight structure for the police, it has to be like, they have to be able to listen, because like I said to you, when they were trying to put Tyler's name on the post office, they were making him clean like snow, white like snow, never did anything wrong, and even try to hide what he did to me. And, I think the guy named LaPerry, I think his name was LaPerry. After he, like, how would I say, keep pushing me, like, for like a week or 2 and 3, and then came out with a bogus report and telling me, well, there was nothing there because the audio is gone. We can't really make a decision. Don't go with his name on the post office. We can't be against that. But I feel like, okay, if I was dead, I'm alive, I'm speaking about it. It's, because I have 2 kids here. I don't want them to leave what I leave. I want them to trust the police. I want them to not fear, when someone stops them. Or I don't want them to feel like, okay, there's no reason to make a complaint against these guys, because the oversight, commission, whatever we call it, will never make anything for them to make a change. So that's pretty much what I want to say in a way. Does that make sense, Lindsay? Like, I don't know if that's what you asked.
Oh, it makes sense to me. And I didn't have, I was just trying to summarize, see what, repeat what I heard you saying, but
All right,
I
all right,
appreciate you
okay.
clarifying. Oh, no,
Okay.
no apologies necessary. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So,
Yo quiero agregar algo o preguntar algo. Nosotros, como Comisión de Relaciones Humanas, también podemos tener un acercamiento con el equipo de monitoreo de la policía.
Amy, is Carlos' question related to what you were pointing to earlier?
I did not get the interpretation on that.
Oh,
I'm looking at my screen.
Did you get the English selected? Okay.
Yeah, but it did not. Do you mind repeating that, Carlos?
Sí, mi pregunta fue de que si nosotros como Comisión de Relaciones Humanas también podemos tener acercamientos con el equipo de monitoreo y saber cuál es su trabajo, qué es lo que están haciendo, y también llevar hacia ellos las quejas que nosotros recibamos de la gente.
Got it. Thank you for that question, Carlos. So right now, the way the ordinance is written is there is multiple ways for the commission to have for the panel or for a complainant to submit a complaint against the police department. The ordinance doesn't specifically outline the HRC as being one of those avenues. However, I think during the revamp of the ordinance, that would be a really smart thing to put in that ordinance should the panel decide to move that way. I think it makes a lot of sense knowing the trust that this HRC has with community. Does that answer your question, Carlos? Okay, thank you.
thanks, Carlos. So my question was about the code of compliance complaint.
Yeah.
So to repeat what I heard you say, Amy, there was a proposed selection of candidates from the two nonprofits, the NAACP and Central Amistad. Is that right? And then there was a complaint, this code of compliance complaint ahead of the meeting when council was supposed to appoint those people that those nonprofits recommended. How, and this was pretty unprecedented. So like you said, so like we're unfamiliar with this process in practice, but how does that complaint review work? And what does that process look like? Because just from my tuning in, right, it seemed like council could have had a decision to make whether they went ahead with their vote or whether they waited to have this complaint, this code of compliance complaint resolved and then go ahead with their vote. And they decided to wait and have this code of compliance complaint resolved. Can you zoom in on what you know about this process and like what it looks like?
So they did not vote to wait until it's resolved. They vote because if they do have what they have to do when they get this complaint is they have to at another meeting determine what action they need to take with that complaint. What I think is, so that's why they bumped it to this week, which was a study session, but now they've converted the first part of the study session to what's called a special meeting. They're still hosting that online virtually. What they're intending to do at that special meeting is one, determine how to proceed with that complaint and if they should have special counsel review the complaint. I think they were apprehensive, not understanding the full breadth of the complaint because it had just come in. So they wanted to, at the same time, wait to, they kicked the can down the road, right? They decided to wait to determine how they wanted to vote on the selection of these panelists for this week. So that will also be part of the special meeting. I have asked the selection committee be available for that meeting in order to answer any questions that council may have about the process. Additionally, there was a question at the meeting last week about what constitutes a quorum. And what we know now, we did not know in that second, is that if the panel does not meet quorum for after their February 8th meeting, then they will not be able to move forward. What a quorum means for the panel is that they have to have at least 6 people seated in order to meet quorum, because there's 11 people they have to go by what is in the ordinance as the number of people they're supposed to have, not necessarily people who are left on the panel. We have confirmed, so we've updated council. There is a quorum requirement. If this doesn't happen, the panel is not able to move its work forward, because we've also confirmed that 2 of the current panel members who have who could, the ordinance says if panel members want to remain on in the absence of enough people, they can. 2 of the panelists who are scheduled to come off had said no, they have no interest in continuing with this work. They want to move on to other endeavors. One of the panel members is now residing and working in Seattle, Washington. So she's ready to focus on that community. The other panelist is just ready to hand over the reins to some other colleagues and community members. So that's where we are now. I'm crossing my fingers that Thursday we can get through this and get folks seated, because we have stressed council the work of this panel is important, and there's a lot of heavy lift that has to do, particularly as we're looking at the next iteration of this ordinance, and we don't want complainants to go unserved. That's all I know at this point with this complaint.
Thanks, Amy. Amy, how are you feeling?
I'm getting a little tired.
Okay.
Honestly. Sorry.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
not getting the best Amy tonight.
What's that?
You're not getting the best Amy tonight.
Yeah. I mean, I know the best Amy, so.
Listen,
On that note, I wonder if we can kind of put some I don't know, like Christine still has some questions. I still have some questions. And so I don't want this conversation to get dropped. And also, like, you're obviously not feeling well. And this is a really important
for sure
conversation. So like trying to hold all of those things. I think, Amy, I'm inclined to just like hand it to you, say how much longer you can hang with us. And then we can, I think, kind of like triage our concerns to make sure that that the conversation continues to happen within like all of our capacity.
Yeah, sure. So probably another 5 minutes would be great. But what I can offer too is if there are very specific questions that would be helpful, if those just get jotted down, I'd be happy to respond to those. And also, if it's helpful for individual members for us to meet, one-on-one, I like coffee. I'd be happy to meet for further discussion too when I'm feeling better. Put that caveat in there.
Cool. Thanks for those 5 minutes. I'd love to, so the way I'd love to manage this is then for us to just verbalize all of the questions that we have right now.
Sure.
And then invite commissioners to follow up with you one-to-one. And invite you to come back in the February meeting. I'm not going to be here in February. So I'll kind of figure out what to do with that in the meantime. But if we could just get all of the questions that commissioners have like right now on the audio record, just so those are preserved. I think that would be really helpful. And then if there are any like easy, quick ones, Amy, maybe you can field those before you sign off.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. And Christine, I'm going to pass it to you first, since I know you have them.
Thanks, Lindsay, and thanks, Amy. And Amy, I would love to take you up on that coffee or maybe tea with honey.
I've been drinking a lot of that. Yeah.
I want to be mindful of the time and energy. So I'm going to just sort of quickly ask some of the more process type questions that I have that, frankly, if we don't get, we probably won't get them to them today. We won't get to them today. And it's quite possible that by Thursday, my questions will be rendered moot anyway, but I'll just ask them anyway. And so part of it is, this code of compliance complaint that just came up. I'm just kind of curious what the merits of it are. And I know that when it came up at City Council, it was so last minute, there really wasn't time to dig in. We may not be able to get to that today. I'm curious what happens if somebody files another code of compliance complaint 10 minutes before City Council meets on Thursday. Then what? I'm curious about what happens if those seats do not get appointed on Thursday. Then what happens? What happens if there is no quorum in February? I'm sure you're all extremely busy trying to map out all the scenarios, because at this point it's pretty unclear what will happen. So I wanted to raise those questions. Then I wanted to take a step back, and I really want to take a moment and thank JH for sharing his story here. You know, JH, you had shared one of those stories with me privately before, and I think possibly you had shared one or both of these stories with the HRC before I joined the HRC. But I want to sort of reiterate that, you know, JH has come out here and shared his stories, and he's a human relations commissioner. And how can we find a better way moving forward? Because he is sharing his stories in an official and public capacity, where stories like his can be heard without having to ask JH to, for example, show up to city council and have to relive it again and tell it again, because he is doing it in a public forum. And so how can these insights be given to the people who need to hear them? We are hearing a lot about, you know, people's Twitter accounts or people feeling unsafe and wanting a greater police presence. Why aren't we hearing these stories too? And I really worry that the picture that the city is getting does not tell a complete picture of what is happening in the city of Boulder. And I just really, this is a rhetorical question, but how can we be better?
Thank you,
Because I'm getting very angry about this.
That's understandable. Yeah. I get angry too, Christine.
Yeah, I'd like, and I wonder, you know, Amy, like I said, I won't be here in February. And I wonder, you know, like if maybe we can circle back on this, like when we understand, like when we let you go and like we understand like the time constraints of this meeting, because this is a little bit outside specifically of the police oversight committee, but it seems like there is some kind of also transparency issue here where like JH is in this meeting publicly sharing these very vulnerable things on the one hand, right? And like that takes a lot of like bravery, and it's like a really vulnerable thing. And then, you know, on the other hand, we as a commission, and I think maybe I'm the only one with the historical knowledge to preserve this, have had some issues where when we've been talking about other issues, not police oversight, but there's been some issues where the city has given an equal public forum to our commission to some interest groups that are relevant to this conversation, and the people showing up in those conversations aren't like publicly named to the aren't named to the public, don't identify themselves, and kind of just hide behind or have the ability to hide behind a like community interest group, I think, to like put it generously. And then like those interest groups can really end up influencing these conversations. And I bring that up because we've, as a commission, have brought that up as an issue in the past, right? That's a problem that like the city like just makes that decision. And not only was there not really much corrective action for when that happens, right? Like these groups are continuing to get a platform that's at least in some ways sanctioned by the city, like, and I'm saying this because JH brought up the group, right? And then also this is coming up in other public platforms, that there are like meetings that aren't public, right? But like a lot of powerful people are joining that like the press isn't invited to, and like city business is happening and decisions are getting made. And while like they're like kind of skirting sunshine laws in these cases, right? Like, I don't know if we're like keeping the spirit of sunshine laws. It seems like a problem that's touching this problem too, right? And like Christine pointed to, I think we're getting into like, you know, Twitter and what we can follow along with on local media, right? But I think, you know, there's an issue where there are these like public official channels that aren't really getting utilized, like this commission, like this panel, and then these interest groups where like people don't have to show face, give name, are speaking really loudly.
Right.
Other questions that folks want to just get on the record. Also, if you don't have them right now, you can follow up with Elizabeth and Ingrid after the meeting, and we can let Amy sign off and drink some tea and rest.
Thank you. So
I'm happy, just really quickly, Amy, happy kind of at the end of the meeting, we kind of follow up on city staff next steps to just summarize to what kind of hearing. So I think the questions are not so rhetorical.
Right.
And there was actually some suggestions coming out of the questions. So we can, I think, cover those again, or at least have staff share back what we heard, Ingrid and I, at the end of the HRC meeting this evening to set up for next month.
yeah, I appreciate
Go
that.
ahead, Amy.
I also thank you for that, Elizabeth, and for all of you. Thank you for having an interest in this work, and also just the work that you do on behalf of the community. We do need to do better, like as an organization, as a community. And so I'm honored to be able to be here in this space with you all tonight. And definitely we'll be connecting and how we can lift this voice up. So thank you.
Thank you, Amy. We appreciate you being here and we hope you feel better.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Right. Have a
Thanks
good
all
rest
of you
your
for the
evening.
questions and the discussion and for making space.
Yep, for sure. Thank you. I'm going to sign off. Bye.
Thanks.
Sorry, well, I lost the packet. So our February meeting, we'll invite Amy back, and in the meantime, please direct your questions to Ingrid and Elizabeth, and we'll pick this item back up. And apologies to the interpreters. I can tell, I think what I'm gathering from Ingrid's reminder, I think I got going and was speaking too fast and maybe used some idioms in there. So apologies for that. Ingrid, thanks for the reminder to speak slowly and avoid using idioms. Okay, so this brings us to our discussion items. We have a lot of staff updates. We have the ones named in the agenda here. And Christine, can you remind us, please, what was your number 4?
Yes, it's just an update on where things are with the Human Relations Fund.
Got
And
it.
I'll just say it's driven by the fact that I've had people ask me when they can apply and if they're eligible, and I actually don't know what to tell them.
No problem. Got it. Okay, so I'm going to screen share again and thank Ingrid again for helping with interpretation on the slides. And just given the time, I'll maybe go just a little faster pace without speaking faster this evening, and know that there will be some more updates coming in February and in March on ARPA, or the American Rescue Plan Act. So one of the things that we've talked about at several HRC meetings is trying to understand kind of what the city council priorities are for 2023 and what the relationship is between city council and HRC on these priorities. So what I have in the slides, the next couple of slides, and you probably can't read this small font, and that's okay, is just to share that city council has essentially a 2-year priority plan. And the website, and we can drop it in the chat as well, that has this information on the slide. We'll have a lot more information as well about how those priorities are set and tracked. And these are priorities that were set in 2022 that are designed to be 2-year priorities. And some of them may go on longer, perhaps. We don't know that now. And one of the reasons that, as you may recall, back in the fall, we shared that there are not going to be any commissioner letters, board commission letters to city council, is so that they could continue to focus on these same priorities for 2023. And so they include things like the accessory dwelling unit update, the inclusionary housing policy update or ordinance update, zoning for affordable housing, middle income housing, day services center for homeless community members, the transportation core arterial network, occupancy reform review, the transit village area plan, the Area 3 urban planning reserve, and then elections issues. City Council is going to be having its retreat on February 23 and 24. And once that meeting link is available, community members can participate either in person or virtually, as I understand it. We can provide that link or that opportunity to commission members to watch, and hopefully, right, can kind of follow up as appropriate with city council after that. But essentially, the process is might seem or sound a little vague, but it really is up to council to kind of determine, as they're considering these priorities, kind of where and how they might want to engage with the HRC. At the same time, if you all as a commission are particularly interested in hearing more about or wanting to provide some input on some of these issues, we hope you'll say so, right? And we can help get that communication to city council members as well. So that's just a little bit of kind of background again on, kind of the where that process is and why it feels maybe a little bit different this year than it has in the past. I'm happy to take questions. I'm not sure how many we'll actually be able to answer at this point, but did just want to reaffirm with you some of these items that we looked at in August at the retreat about what city council priorities are, and just let you know the date, the timing of the retreat. And we can certainly provide some more information closer to that date. It'll actually be right after the next HRC meeting in February, if you all want to be able to participate in that way. Any questions about that now before moving ahead, or comments? Christine.
Just a quick question. When council has a retreat and maps out their priorities for the coming year, do they actually start with the previous year and use that as a basis for discussion? And I guess I'll slow down, sorry. The reason I'm asking is because I'm wondering if looking at 2022 is also an indication of some things that we may see again for 2023.
Yeah, I mean, that's correct. So that's why essentially the retreat date got moved back a little, and there weren't really taking kind of letters from boards and commissions to be able to say this is, most of the things on the plate are still on the plate. And so really wanting to keep that focus
Okay.
and not, you know, add much more to a pretty long list.
Thank you. That's helpful. I guess a related comment question is, if when we are doing outreach to fill our open seat for the HRC, if we are in particular reaching out to organizations that cover some of these issues.
That's a great question. I think the answer to that is no. I mean, I think this can provide an example of the kinds of priorities that are on council's plate, some of which are likely to involve the commission. But thinking about some of the issues that have come up in the past couple of years, and even including some that we hope to address at meetings in the next over the next, 2 or 3 months, say, include, for example, the municipal court, the question that was brought up by our community court colleagues or municipal court colleagues last year, and you all agreed, yes, we want to hear from them and provide some input to them on the community court process. So that's not a council priority, but something that another department is reaching out about. And I think there are probably, as many different issues that will come up throughout the year that could make it onto the HRC agenda and that fall into your purview that would not be on this list.
Yeah.
So it could be an example, if I was doing recruiting as a current commissioner, I think it's important and helpful to describe what kinds of issues, the range of issues that have and could come before you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Lindsay?
I was just going to say that if there are no other questions, I wanted to just invite you to keep rolling, Elizabeth, with your keep moving through with your, I'm sorry, again, another idiom, keep moving through with your updates, please.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you.
So I'm actually going to try to go fairly swiftly through this section because we've given some brief updates on the American Rescue Plan Act previously, and there's a lot more that can come from this as well. But in short, these are funds, again, that have come to the city of Boulder from the federal government for COVID relief and response. And in total, the city of Boulder received a little over $20 million that we are required to spend completely by the end of 2026. And this chart just gives a little bit of background on that we've had 3 different phases or tranches that we have, that staff have kind of created and taken to city council for approval so that we can go ahead and make expenditures that will help our community recover from COVID. And so the first set was approved back in 2021 in September, and that was nearly $4 million. The second batch was approved last spring at $4,800,000 in sum. And this last piece, the largest piece called Tranche 3, we took those recommendations to City Council on December 1st, so just after your last meeting. And I had shared with you at that time that we were what we were proposing for funding from the Housing and Human Services Department. And there's a very kind of a longer list in a description of all the different items on the website that I've attached here in the slide. One thing to note is that we're also working on a dashboard that will go on the website pretty soon that will enable anyone in the community to see exactly how the city is proposing we expend these funds and how much has been spent to date, and what some of the outcomes are associated with these expenditures. So for example, we can say that this amount of money is being spent from these ARPA funds by HHS, by the Housing Human Services Department, for basic needs. And you'll be able to go in, or anyone will, and see, oh, I see that you've spent $150,000 on food security, and this much money for rental assistance, and this much is going for behavioral health, and this much for guaranteed income. So we're working on getting this dashboard loaded, and that should be a really easy way for any community member to keep track on what we're doing and what kind of impact it's having in the community. And here again are just some of the items that are of interest, we think, a special interest to the Human Relations Commission members. That includes some funding for Digital Divide, actually providing internet for more reliable internet services at Boulder Housing Partner properties. We have $400,000 available to help community members whose water utility bills are overdue and who need some financial assistance for that. So if you know people who are water utility customers, please help spread the word about this program. Unfortunately, this doesn't necessarily help many community members who live in manufactured housing or at Boulder Housing Partners, because those utility costs are wrapped up in with rent and other expenses, and we can't kind of tease it out that way. But there are a lot of other community members who could be eligible to receive this assistance, and we really want to make sure it goes for that purpose. We also have $500,000 that we have to be able to allocate through our Housing Human Services Department, as I mentioned, for things like food, help with sheltering, rental assistance, other financial assistance for transportation, things that people are lifting up to our own staff, and making grants to nonprofit agencies. We are allocating more funds to the emergency response connectors to keep them going through the extent of COVID. A building home project, which is helping people who have recently transitioned from homelessness to housing to be able to stay in housing and getting the support that they need. And then at the meeting in November, I also just shared with you that these are the additional projects that we are planning on putting in place with the kind of tranche 3, or that third bucket of funding, of ARPA funding. And there is going to be a meeting on March 2, where we hope City Council will give their final approval to expenditure of these items. And you can watch on YouTube the December 1st 2022 meeting where city staff introduced all of these items. And we know that this guaranteed income project is one that has really been of interest to Human Relations Commission members. So what I'm going to do is just share a very brief update on where we are with this project. And then I would suggest that we probably hold most of the kind of comments or discussion on that until the March meeting, when we'll have a lot more information to share. But basically, again, the guaranteed income project would provide direct cash assistance to people who are eligible for the project and who are selected for the project, and that it comes with no strings attached. It's unconditional, meaning people would just get some cash assistance for a set amount of time, somewhere between 1 and 2 years. And the purpose is to really supplement what they may be receiving from other income from work, and also other assistance programs. And there's a lot of text on this slide, but it just kind of shares how the Guaranteed Income Project really meets the city's ARPA, or American Rescue Plan Act, criteria. Just really focusing on, to the extent that we can, the transformation, right? We want to be able to use these funds to help people today, because we know so many people are struggling. And this kind of pilot project, we think, can really change the way we think about the needs of people living in poverty in Boulder, and change the way we think about how people have the dignity to make their own decisions. They know what's best for them and their family members, and we believe they can make their own decisions with how to use additional income. And we can spend funds this way through ARPA. We haven't always been able to do that through other federal funding programs. So we're really pleased that we can use some of these funds to have this kind of transformative project in place. We are hoping that this project will help meet many community needs, including all the higher costs of living that community members are experiencing. And in some ways, addressing the supports that were in place earlier in COVID or now, but are soon going to be taken away. Two examples of that are that when the public health emergency order is lifted at the federal level, there may be people who have been able to receive Medicaid benefits this whole time because the federal government would not allow people to get kicked off during COVID. Once that is lifted, there may be many people in the community who are no longer eligible and will find out they're not able to receive that benefit. The state has also recently announced that SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance for program, that those emergency benefits that were put in place during COVID are now going to be removed as well. So we know that it's going to be more expensive for people to live here, and some people who have been receiving COVID benefits won't. And we hope that this is the kind of program that at least will be able to help those folks. So we're really excited, both Ingrid and I and others on our city team, that in the last several weeks, really from just since the beginning of January, we have in place a community task force made up of 9 community members who were selected out of 60 applicants, which is very exciting, who are helping make decisions, or make recommendations, I should say, that will help staff make decisions on the design of this project. As I mentioned earlier, we still have to decide how much money per month people will be able to receive, what target populations we want to be able to receive these benefits, how we're going to run an application process and select people, and then how long those benefits may be in place. And we're really excited that what we wanted from the community task force applicants was a really diverse cross-section of community members. As it is, the 9 members who were selected all have lived experience with low income, and actually 8 of 9 have experience with low income. And all 9 committee members identify as a population that experiences systemic disparities, either by race, ethnicity, gender orientation, or other identities, and work closely with community members with low income. So what we wanted was a committee or a task force that had primarily people with lived experience, and what we have is a task force made up entirely of people who have lived experience. That includes 1 representative who is also a community connector. And I'll just note, I mentioned this at the very beginning of the meeting, that we, to all the people who did not get selected, we shared with them information about boards and commissions and committees for which we're currently recruiting. So we really do hope that of the folks who just really poured out in really wanting to help shape this program, that some of them anyway will be interested in signing up as a potential Human Relations Commission member. We had our first task force meeting last week. We have a second meeting tomorrow night. Tomorrow night. The third one on January 30th. And then we will be working on compiling all of the recommendations so far into the memo to City Council in preparation for that meeting on March 12th. We will have some additional meetings with the task force, certainly through April. And because there's a lot of other areas for input that we'd like. But primarily we're focused on getting those kind of major decisions made as a city, along with our consultants, Impact Charitable. So we can update council, get their approval, we hope, to go ahead and expend the funds and then continue working on the project. Lindsay.
I don't have a question because I heard you ask us to hold our questions, but I just wanted to lift up a little celebration and thanks to Elizabeth and Ingrid and everyone else involved with guaranteed income. It's there's nothing that is as consistently and overwhelmingly proven to be effective as simply giving people money to improve their lives. And I just want to offer some big kudos because this is really important, good work. And it sounds like you all did a really good job implementing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Stay tuned. For sure. And yeah, happy to, again, there's a lot that's going to be put in place in the next couple of months. We can keep you updated kind of proactively when we have updates to share on the website. But also if you have questions in the meantime, please share those and we'll be able to address them for sure in upcoming meetings. So then these are some additional items to share. And the last one, we plugged in Human Relations Fund right there at the end, Christine. So first, you all will remember last year, we started talking about potentially moving the Human Relations Commission from its home in the Housing Human Services Department over to the city manager's office. We have not forgotten about that. We've been having conversations among staff and both Ingrid and myself, Amy, who was just on earlier, the city manager, our director, Kurt Fernhuber, to try to kind of plan out how and when that might take place. At the moment, while nothing's for sure yet, it would make a lot of sense if we're going to make that move to have it happen before and some new or renewed commission members join. And so that's really our goal. We have some more meetings coming up this week and next week, I believe, and we'll be able to provide another update to you in February. This again, our intention is not that it disrupt what you do or even as much how it happens, but just that you would have a new home that might just make a little bit more logical sense when thinking about your role as really serving the city as a whole, and may end up having the effect of some, kind of tighter communications on other citywide issues like we were just discussing. Then when Wendy Schwartz came recently, certainly with Chief Harold to talk about reimagining policing, Wendy came back and talked more and provided some more information about the additional alternative response program called the Community Assistance Response Team. So Wendy presented to the City Council at a study session on December 8th. It's a really, really great, very comprehensive presentation about that plan and some really great dialogue with city council members who provided some input and feedback about how such a program might be put in place. So what we wanted to do, instead of kind of going into those details again, was just provide some of that information to you. So the slides that you'll receive have a link to the actual meeting recording, which would be great to watch if you can have time. And then a pretty brief document that summarizes that meeting, the discussion, and some of the recommendations and comments from city council members. So please, if you can, have a look. We're sure that Wendy will be happy to come back another time and provide an update if that's something that you're interested in as the program begins to take more shape this year. And then lastly, for now, the Human Relations Fund. So Christine and everyone, we are planning on getting an update, kind of short blurb or description, I shouldn't say blurb, sorry interpreters, a short description on the webpage that lets everyone know what the status is. But basically we are working on setting a calendar or a schedule so that organizations can apply just one time for any event or program for which they're requesting funding for kind of winter through spring and then summer through the winter for the rest of the year. We hope that process, which will be online, we heard that feedback from grantees loud and clear, that they really preferred being able to apply for a grant online. So we're working on setting that up. And right now, our goal is to have an application available by the end of March that would be able to capture for which applicants would be able to request funding for events from June through the end of the year for 2023. Then we would also have kind of an overlapping application open up late summer or early fall to get kind of January through May. Most of the events that we fund and the programs that we fund happen between June and October. So we're hoping that, assuming that that'll still be the case, but putting this in order will acknowledge that we also have MLK Day, that there may be Black History Month, perhaps Women's History Month, just other events that we hope people will have in mind and want to reach out to the city for funding on that as well. So that's in general the update. Again, we're planning on getting that update on the webpage as soon as possible, and then communicating that proactively, certainly to everyone who has requested and received funding previously, so they know what the schedule is. Christine.
I just have a quick question, which is if people are interested now, or they have something for which they want funding before the summer, should we just ask them to reach out to Ingrid to reach out to you, or what should we tell them?
We're kind of in transition right now where Ingrid is in the HRC is going to be, well, the HRC is already disconnected from the funding, but where Ingrid has really just been helping kind of wrap up from MLK and assist with communication. We're trying to make a transition to have this program shift over to our investment staff. Our colleagues, Julia Daly, who in October took my place as Human Investments Manager, and our grant specialist, Markeisha Kehagan, so that it can, kind of more come off of Ingrid's plate and on for that team. But at the moment, please do encourage folks to reach out either to Ingrid or myself if they have any questions while we're making that transition. Unfortunately, while we're making this transition, we may not be able to do much funding before the summer. It's just going to take our time to really get the program up and running with with a new application. And not to go into detail, but it just, we want people to apply. Are you asking for funding for this, or this? And then kind of create, if this, then this. It'll just take a little bit to get that set up. And again, knowing that most of our, historically, most funds are requested for that June through October, we're hoping that, few, maybe if any, or, organizations or initiatives will really kind of feel the brunt. But yeah, it would be better for us to know, if there's a need out there that we might be able to fill, or make a recommendation to another body if we're not able to help right away.
Great, thank you. And that helps for the transition, just to point them to you and then you can help them. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll help them navigate. Thank you. Not on the slide, but I'll just share perhaps as the last item then that we, for February and March, we talked with Lindsay and Carlos about moving the discussion on the protected class issue from February to March, because Lindsay's not able to be here for February and really didn't want to miss out on that, after having been, helping track this issue for a long time now. We're also in conversation, as I mentioned earlier, with our city colleagues with community. Sorry, I keep getting the terminology mixed up. With the municipal court, for when they might be ready to come and share with you all and get your feedback on the community court issue. So we've actually reached out to them to see if they would be available to come next month, because of the other meeting agenda change, and haven't heard back from them yet. But if that's not possible, we can bump that to April. So that's staff update for this evening. Any other questions?
Elizabeth, I have a question about something kind of unrelated, and I'm bringing it up because I won't be here in February for the meeting or the agenda setting meeting. But I want to pass it to people who have relevant or related questions to what you were just talking about first.
Sure. I think you're good.
I think it's me. I'm bringing this up because maybe others are concerned about it too, and I would ordinarily bring this up in the agenda setting meeting. But I was so sad to read about Golden West closing down, and I know that the city had tried some things to prevent Golden West from closing down. And I'm wondering if someone can come and speak to us or speak to the commission, because I won't be here in February, and then March sounds like it's already kind of shaping up to be a pretty full meeting, about to kind of bring those I guess the housing issues there into context and relevance for us, and we can fully understand what happened at Golden West and how any related issues may around affordable housing for seniors may continue to what may continue to happen in the future after Golden West.
Yeah, more than happy to put together, and we can talk about it maybe at agenda setting before you, while you're available as well, Lindsay, for who might be best to come. If it is, I'm just thinking a couple of things out loud. It could be specifically around Golden West. If it's also helpful to just kind of have at least a little bit of context setting for what role they play in the community, and for folks who aren't aware, it is older adult residents here in Boulder that has recently announced that they are discontinuing their assisted living part of the organization. And which is just, I mean, we're all feeling that really, it's a painful decision for them. We know that it's also just really puts Boulder in an even more challenging position with far fewer options generally for lower income older adults. So we're really feeling that, but just kind of thinking out loud that we may also be able to ask someone from our older adult services or the county area agency on aging, one of those agencies, if it's helpful, to come and just share a little bit of context about services and kind of affordable housing issues as we know them for older adults.
Thanks so much.
For sure.
Thanks, Elizabeth. And since nobody else had any other questions for Elizabeth, I'm going to move us on to our item 7 or new item 7, which is updates from commissioners. Event updates. I really wanted to attend, but wasn't able to make the MLK events. I'm curious if anyone was able to make those.
I have a confession to make, which is I did make an MLK event, but it was not in the city of Boulder. I went to the city of Lafayette's MLK event in large part because it was a youth-led event that was planned by middle and high schoolers, and I wanted to go to an event where I could bring my kids and have them participate as well. And it was my first time going there, and it was fantastic. You know, I don't know if you are all aware, but Centaurus High School has, because of a youth-led initiative, has become the first high school in the school district to set up like an ethnic studies class. And so they talked a little bit about that. They organized performances. They gave great speeches. They brought in a band, the Hazel Miller Band. And then there was a big long march that took place throughout. I don't know, I felt like it was probably 1.5 miles, longer than I was expecting. And there were babies in strollers, and there were people in wheelchairs, and people of all ages and races. And so my whole family went, and we met up with some other kids. And then at the end, Representative Nick Hughes gave a speech. So if you're looking for something you can bring young kids to, it was fantastic. So I did go. It was not the city of Boulder.
Thanks, Christine. Other commissioners? I have a quick question. I know that sometimes the events are captured on YouTube. Does anyone know if the MLK events this year were on YouTube? That may be a thing that we're moving away from with more in-person events.
I can remember that some of the components of the collaborative effort between NAWSCP, the Museum of Boulder, and Second Baptist Church included a non-in-person component. I'm sure they're recovering their breath after a very busy weekend, but I will go ahead and follow up with them and share those with you all. And I can check with other grantees as well.
Thanks so much, Ingrid.
Of course.
Yeah, I'd love to know if that is available as well, because I wasn't able to make it to an event myself. Just kind of hung out with my family at home, which is really nice.
All right. I love to hear that, Beaker. It's good to have some family time. Okay, well, if we have no other event updates, that brings us to other items. Again, this item, the other items item is for things that came up during the meeting that feel urgent, but are not otherwise on the agenda. Okay. And then follow-up items. Elizabeth, Ingrid, we know you got them.
Well, last thing first, we'll check with colleagues and then with Lindsay and Carlos before the February meeting on potentially having someone or someone's come and share a little bit more about affordable housing and services for older adults, given the Golden West decision. We will collect any questions that come up between now and the February meeting regarding the police oversight panel and send them over to Amy Kane, who's already let us know that she would be interested in coming back and answering more of those questions and having that conversation with commissioners. So Lindsay, we will miss you, but that obviously includes you. So JH, Feker, Christine, Carlos, please, we really just encourage that. It was such an important conversation. And I'll just, again, add to others, JH, who really thanked you for sharing your story, understanding that it is reliving that experience for you. It's important for us to hear that, and even more important that we continue to act upon what we hear. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And just on that point quickly, I mean, I think from in the questions, I think were some suggestions really. Christine, from your how can we do better question, what I heard from that is a pretty specific question or suggestion that we continue to create ways that processes that really enable community members who experienced trauma, have not had a positive experience, to communicate that without having to feel the additional burden of having to do it over and over again, or perhaps not in a public space, to really kind of feel as though those experiences and stories can be shared safely. And so that to me feels like something, it's a concept, but it's also a pretty specific question, and one that we should be able to continue to wrestle with and come up with a good solution. And Lindsay, you brought up this dynamic, right? That there are people, that are organizations, and this is true on so many different fronts, right? Who have that access, who have the flexibility, the knowledge, the familiarity with local political processes, and utilize them, and other people in the community who don't know that it's an option, right? To have access to staff or even council members. And so what are some ways in which we can continue to really reinforce access for every community member, and particularly people who have not historically or don't currently have that voice in that forum. So those are a couple of things. JH, you were talking about accountability, transparency, and I think just an overall sense that people want to know what that connection is or could be between the HRC and the oversight panel, which is, Carlos, what you raised as well. Lindsay.
Thanks so much, Elizabeth. Yeah, and I can email a follow-up about this, and I think that is a really important point, so I don't want to dismiss it. But it's also, in addition to the fact that local government isn't so accessible to to people and they may not be informed about like the channels for participation. There's this additional dynamic where there are some interest groups that have access that is really not that have access while like as a commission or like as relevant to our conversation, the police oversight panel or the NAACP or El Centro Amistad, the groups and people in these official positions aren't really like being leveraged for. And I think that puts to underline, that concern, I think is one of the frustrations that I'm hearing across at least those three groups of groups.
Mhm.
Those three
Got
groups.
it. Got it.
Thank you.
For that.
Thank you.
We have some work to do to help support recruitment for HRC, and we'll hope that you all can help with that. So we'll send the flyer out to you and also resend a kind of a longer request for applicants for our Housing Human Services boards, commissions, and committees. We have 5, 6, maybe more committees that are staff appointed, not city council, that are also really important things. People who help make funding decisions, for example. And let's see, we will stand at the ready to continue to help plan for the February and March meeting agendas as well. Christine.
What day is our February meeting? Because I think if we were on a Monday, we would be on President's Day. Did we already move that one?
Yes, we did.
Okay,
As a
great.
consensus for the 21st,
Great.
Tuesday, the 21st.
Great. I was just hoping that we could also add back in at some point a discussion about whether we want to adjust our meeting days, since towards the end of the year, we keep on running into this third Monday
All the
problem where
holidays.
there are always holidays. So if we could revisit that too in the next month or two, that would be great.
Great.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that reminder and for those follow-up items. So that brings us, it is 8:23 to adjournment. And we just need, again, the motions, the first and the second, and then we all vote.
I move that we adjourn this evening's meeting.
Yo secundo la moción.
Right? We have a first and a second, and we will all vote
Hi.
aye. All right, we've got either a verbal or a visual aye from everybody. The ayes have it unanimously adjourning the meeting. Thank you all so much for attending and for participating and for all the excellent work you do. Thank you to the interpreters and you.
Here's a question, Pete. Are you a troublemaker?
Oh, sorry, Jade. Thank you to the interpreters. We'll continue to do our best to slow down and avoid idioms. Thank you, everybody, so much. Have a lovely night.
Have a good evening, everyone. Bye.
Take care.
Gracias
Thank
a
you.
todos. Buenas noches. Gracias,
Buenas
Elena.
noches.
Gracias.
Bye, everyone. Good night.